Hello, my name's Phil Clubley. I'm the current chairperson of the Kinesiology Federation. And as part of our celebrations for our 30th anniversary this year, we're speaking to people from the world of kinesiology, people connected with the Kinesiology Federation, and those who, more importantly, founded the Kinesiology Federation back in 1991. Today, I'm going to be speaking to Jane Thurnell-Read, who is very close to my heart because she was one of the first teachers of health kinesiology, which is the kinesiology that I trained in, and the kinesiology that made such a massive impact on my family's life. Jane was the first teacher of HK. She was the head of HK in the UK for a while. And she also set up her own business, LifeWorks Potential, and has just started another business, which is called Upliness, which is about encouraging older people in society to have more exercise and improve their diet and those kinds of things. I also follow Jane on Instagram, and it's amazing to see you lifting weights and pulling tractor tires and things like that, and supporting veganism. So hi Jane, how are you doing?
Oh, well, that's a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much.
You've had such a full life, and I'm such a fan.
One of the things I've said for a long time that my tombstone, I mean, I'm probably going to be cremated, but you know, when you think about your life, on my tombstone it's going to say she lived passionately.
Oh, that's amazing. So Jane, what brought you to kinesiology initially? What was life like that led you towards looking for alternative therapies?
I developed eczema on my hands and feet when I was about 8 years old, I guess. I mean, it was so bad, sometimes I could barely walk. I'd wake up in the morning with blood all over the pillows because I'd been, you know, scratching while I was asleep. And then into my teens, and I developed hives, I developed hay fever, I had permanent catarrh. I mean, nothing really serious, but lots of problems. I remember when I was working in an office at one point, and somebody said to me, "What's wrong with you this week?" And it made me realise that everybody viewed me as the office hypochondriac, which was very upsetting. But I knew I wasn't. I knew I wasn't a hypochondriac. I knew that actually, you know, I did have completely debilitating hay fever where I couldn't go out. Had to sit in a room with the curtains closed and just wait for it to pass. And then my eldest son was born, and he developed eczema when he was about 18 months old. And my GP said to me, "Oh, don't worry, it's only a bit of eczema." You know, he felt I was really overreacting because I was really upset. And I just thought, you know, I don't want him to have the life that I've had. I want him, you know, which is that I could probably count on the fingers of one hand the number of days that I'd actually felt well in my whole life, you know, truly well. There was always something. There was the eczema one day, and another day there was the hives and so on. So I decided I needed to find a solution for him. And this is back in 82, 83, something like that, so quite a long time ago. And he was convinced he was allergic to something. At that time, I started reading books about it, and basically it said, go on water only for 5 days, and then introduce one food at a time. Mm. And obviously, you know, I have this 18-month-old toddler. You can't put an 18-month-old toddler on water for 5 days. So I started looking for a solution, and I went to the Mind, Body, Spirit, a big exhibition at Olympia in London. And I went round and I was thinking, I've got to find, there must be some way of detecting allergies. And I went round and I came to a Touch for Health stand. And on the Touch for Health stand, there was a handwritten poster at the back, which said, muscle testing can be used for stress, da, 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 da. And one of the things it said was allergy testing. And so I went up and started talking to somebody, and to cut a very long story short, at the end of that, I ended up, I also lived in London, so I ended up finding the name of a guy who taught Touch for Health in London. So I made an appointment for Jonathan, took him along, and he did some testing and said he's allergic to wheat.
Right.
So I took him home, and my then husband, who was an electrical engineer, was like, oh, right, so he's allergic to wheat. So I said, yeah. So he said, oh, okay. So I said, you know, this means no bread, no, da, 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 da. And he said, okay. And then he said, well, how did the testing work? And of course, when I started to explain it, this electrical engineer was like, oh, you know, what a load of rubbish sort of thing. And I said, well, I've paid the money, you know, so I might as well at least give it a try. It's not going to, you know, it's not going to, I'm just going to take him off all wheat and see what happens. And after 24 hours of no wheat, his eczema subsided. And he also had continuous diarrhea. The diarrhea went.
Right.
My scientific husband said, well, that's a coincidence. So I put him on, so I said, okay, well, let's put him back on wheat and see what happens. So I put him back on wheat, and of course the eczema flared up and the diarrhea came back. So he became convinced of that. And at the time I was a university lecturer, and I'd really enjoyed it when I first started, but I was actually getting slightly bored with it. And so I decided, you know, this was just such an amazing therapy. You know, why would you not want to use it to help this small child and other people? And I found, coincidentally, I went to him myself, and he found what I was allergic to. My eczema went, my hay fever dropped dramatically because my body wasn't so overburdened with fighting food allergies and so on. So I started doing some Touch for Health courses. And I did those with Brian Butler, with Natalie Davenport, and then I set myself up as an allergy therapist, and I put a note in a local health store saying, you know, I can help you with allergies, and nothing happened, and I waited and waited and waited, and nothing happened. And then eventually one Sunday night the phone went, and I answered the phone, and this woman said, I'm really sorry bothering you on a Sunday night, but I saw your advert in the health store, and I'm going back to wherever she lived tomorrow morning, but I'd really like to come see you. You know, is there any chance of me seeing you this evening? And I said no. I was just terrified. I really relate to that, you know, kinesiologists being terrified of actually practicing in real life. And I said no. And I came off the phone, and my then husband said to me, have you just done what I think you've done? I said, yes. And he was like, oh dear. And then a few weeks later, he announced he'd found somebody for me to see, and he'd persuaded this woman to bring her son to see me. And the 16-year-old kid turned up, and he was completely emaciated. And he'd had very, very severe diarrhea, had part of his bowel removed. And I used muscle, I mean, I was like freaking out, you know, I mean, if I touch him, he's going to break his arms or something, you know, he was so thin. And my mind went blank, and I was like, I can't do this. And then I just looked at him, and I felt such a huge amount of pity for him. And I looked at his mother, who was deeply, deeply troubled because of the situation her son was in. And I thought, I just have to put that on one side, you know, all my anxiety, and I've just got to do the best I can and just hope it will be good enough. And she phoned me, I think it was something like 3 to 5 days later, and said, because I told her what he was allergic to, and she took him off this stuff. And she phoned me about 3 to 5 days later and said, he's so much better. Is it normal for people to respond so quickly? And of course, I didn't know, because this was my first client. So I went, oh, yes. And she said, it's just amazing. It's so amazing. And I said, oh, oh, that's good. I tried to be really lucky. Once I put the phone down, I ran all around the house screaming and shouting, waving my arms like a mad woman, because I was so excited about it. I mean, it was just like, yes, yes, up and down the stairs. Yeah, I've done it, I've done it, I've done it. I mean, that was such a great feeling, and such a confirmation that, particularly in spite of all my fear and anxiety, and in spite of being brand new as a therapist, I'd actually managed to make a significant difference to this child and to his whole family, because, you know, it dominated everybody's life.
That's what's amazing about it, isn't it? That, you know, you can work with or treat a person, but it does have a wider impact on the people they live with, the people they work with. But I think as well, it's a testament to the therapy, you know, that we as practitioners, we can be really nervous when we start, but if we just do the work, if we do what we've been trained to do, the work is just so good. Julian Baker, who teaches the Bowen therapy, he once said to me, and I think this is a really good analogy, he said, you know, it's a bit like if you're speaking German and you're not very good at German, but the German speakers, they manage to hear what you're saying often. And, you know, when you're in new kinesiology, you're speaking maybe a very broken version of kinesiology, but the body wants to respond. The energy system wants to heal. Yeah. And so it may not be perfect, but it's going to listen. Yes, and I think the body's just grateful to be listened to. Yes, absolutely right. Yes. So you did you do specifically Touch for Health for a while then, and then? Yeah, I did Touch for Health, and I started using homeopathic remedies for desensitizing, so that people didn't need to avoid things, and that combination worked really, really well. And then in 1987, I got I was going to say an email, but it can't have been an email. It must have been a flyer through the post. I got a flyer through the post, I guess. Or no, I think it might have, anyway, something. And announcing that there was this allergy course run by Jimmy Scott. And I booked to do it. And I nearly changed my mind afterwards, because I was actually getting quite bored with just treating people. I was having huge success, but I was getting really bored with just treating people for allergies, and wanted to sort of widen it out more as well, my practice, so I could help people with other things than allergies. And so I booked on this course, and I thought to myself, why have I booked this course? This is, you know, I don't want to do more on allergies. I want to do other stuff. So I went on the course, that first course in London with Jimmy Scott. And I was completely bowled over by it. And it was a lot more than allergies. And I went home. My eldest son, who was then about, how old would he have been? He would have been about 8 or 9, and was severely dyslexic. And one of the things was that when he was born, he was operated on in Great Ormond Street. And Jimmy talked about various, that scars and things can block energy. So I went home and I said to him, I want to do some, you know, work on. I've just learned something new. I want to try it out. And I didn't tell him why I was trying it out. And so I did some HK on him, and he was constantly going, "Oh, aren't you finished yet? Aren't you finished yet? Can I get? I'm fed up. I want to go and, you know, do X or something." I was like, no, just like, I'm just practicing. So I didn't tell him what was happening. And then later on that day, I said to him, "Oh, what about reading your school book?" You know, he'd bring home a reading book from school, and normally it'd be, "No, I'm not doing it." And he went, "Oh, okay." I literally sort of fell off my chair at this response. And that evening, he read in phrases for the first time in his life, rather than reading each word as an individual unit. I was completely bowled over. And when we look back on it afterwards, over a 6-month period, because he was tested every 6 months at school to check for his reading age, over that 6-month period, his reading age had improved by 2 years.
But in fact, it wasn't actually over 6 months. It was actually over like one day.
Yes. Yeah.
But his reading age went up by 2 years. So, of course, I was just, again, completely excited and sold on HK. There weren't any more courses on HK in the UK, so I ended up going to Amsterdam to do a course there. And while I was there, I said to Jimmy, look, you know, there doesn't seem to be any more courses happening in HK. Kay McCarroll was the person who brought him over the first time. And I said, I know Kay is very busy with Educate. I would like to take you, you know, sponsor you to come to the UK again. So we agreed on that. And so then I started sponsoring him regularly to come over to the UK and teach. And then in 1990, I think, something like that, I became his first teacher in the world of HK. So that was
amazing.
A huge privilege, but also quite terrifying, because I thought, if I make a mess of this, he's not going to let anybody else do it.
Oh, and you didn't make a mess of it?
No, I don't think. No, I think I didn't. So that's good.
No, I think you did a very good job. So, how did that then lead into the Kinesiology Federation? Was that just because you connected with kinesiology, or did you feel that something needed to happen or change in that world?
I wasn't that involved with the actual setting up of the Kinesiology Federation itself. I was there at that original London meeting where it was set up. What I was responsible for was bringing health kinesiology into it, you know, and making it part of it. There were some people, there were some kinesiologists which were a bit reluctant, I think, and over the years were still continued to be reluctant, because they felt that that they were a lot of let me see what's the best way to put it. A lot of kinesiologies, the foundation is Touch for Health, and it's built from there. For some kinesiology, the foundation is muscle testing, and it's built from there. And so there was this sort of a bit of tension between the KF and the foundation with Touch for Health, and the people who felt the foundation for them was much more muscle testing and where that took them. I was very strong that we need to stay within the KF, and I talked to other people who were going, oh, we should have a separate like muscle testing organ. And I said, we're so few, you know, we need to stay together, and all these different branches of kinesiology need to be part of the same thing and not going off in different directions. If we want to be heard, then we need to be united.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and I think you've continued to support that and support the KF over the years subsequent to that. So when you think about kinesiology and you have new clients and you're teaching and those sorts of things, do you have a way of describing kinesiology that the layperson can understand?
Of course, I don't teach or see clients now, but I feel quite strongly about this. Because I think a lot of people give a Wikipedia definition of what kinesiology is. You know, kinesiology originates from da 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 da, and it was da 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 da, and it came to UK and da 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 da. And it's really boring. You know, it's like they're giving the history.
Yes.
Of kinesiology, and particularly when I'm talking to new people, or when I was talking to potential clients, they're not actually interested in who founded kinesiology. They're not interested in the finer points of kinesiology, you know, that we may use Riddler points, and these were developed by this guy called Riddler, I assume, in such and such a date. They're not interested in that. What they want to know is whether kinesiology will help them.
Yes.
So I used to do a fairly general introduction, and if they'd asked me about it, I would then say to me, why are you interested?
Yes.
And then people would go, well, you know, I've got, or my child's got, or my husband's got, or my mother's got X, Y, and Z. And I was wondering if it would help. And then you talk to that specific concern.
Yes.
And I don't, you know, and I say, you know, I talk about muscle testing, and I say, I actually don't know how it works. But what I do know is it works, and it helps loads of people get better.
Mm.
And, you know, I mean, that's often the sort of introduction I would do. I'm a kinesiologist. I use muscle testing, which means we put your arm in a particular position and then we apply light pressure, and that can give us information about your body. People often look at you like a bit goggle-eyed at that. And I usually say, because they're often thinking, well, this sounds like a load of rubbish.
Yeah.
So I sort of acknowledge that by saying, I don't know how it works.
Mm.
Sometimes I would say it still surprises me that it works. And that is honestly true. You know, when I see demonstrations of kinesiology, like a KF meeting or something, I'm always like, there's a bit of me going, this can't possibly work. Even after all these years, even after almost 40 years, is it? Something like, yeah, nearly 40 years of being involved in kinesiology. There's a bit of me that still goes, no, that can't work. They're pressing harder. You know? Yes. Yeah. So when I talk to people who don't know anything about it, and, you know, in terms of existing clients, you know, what I used to say to the students, if you go to the dentist, you know, you don't expect them to give you a whole history of dentistry and, you know, and explain in clinical detail, you know, why they're doing this. What is the composition of this particular material they're going to put in your mouth? You just expect some general explanation, and they stop the pain.
Yes.
And I sort of feel kinesiology is the same.
People do you think with kinesiology
that pain is.
Are we maybe desperate to explain it to people?
Yes.
Are we trying to convince ourselves to some degree? It's like, because of that skepticism, you know, it's like if you go to the dentist, you just think he's a dentist and he knows what he's doing.
Yes.
If I'm going to see a kinesiologist, I want proof that this works. I want to know what I'm spending my money on. And I just wonder whether we feel there's some skepticism about it, that we're trying to kind of to prove it somehow, whereas, you know, when we know what the results are, when we work with people and we see people getting better, and we've had work done on ourselves and we feel better. But I just wonder whether there's still this element of us that feels like we're desperately trying to prove it.
Yeah, and the trouble is, if you're desperately trying to prove it, at some level people pick that up, and that translates into, oh, maybe this doesn't work. Yes. Whereas, you know, if you're really matter of fact, I mean, several people said to me, you know, the whole, after a session, not usually straight away, but sometime down the line, they'd say, you know, what you did seemed totally mad, but you were, you know, you just went about it and you just did it. And we had a normal conversation. You didn't seem mad. What you did seem mad, but you yourself didn't seem mad.
Yes.
And so, you know, I think that sort of carries people forward. And I think, you know, the more you explain, the less confident people could become in you, because they don't expect to go to a professional and have that over explaining stuff.
Yes. Yeah, I know when I first started practicing, you know, and I'd get the client in the chair and I would start telling them what kinesiology was and what reflex points were, and you just see them glaze over. And you realise, again, you're kind of wasting your time. And I guess as you become more experienced...
And they are paying for it.
Yes, absolutely.
They're sitting there thinking, oh, I've been here a quarter of an hour, which has cost me so much, and he hasn't done anything yet.
Absolutely. But I guess when we've worked with more people, and then you do start speaking to people, and people say, well, what is it you do? And you can say, well, why are you interested in it? You get people to go, you know, I've got this thing going on. Is it something you can help with? And you say, well, actually, I've worked with people in the past who have had that. And, you know, they've felt that the work's been successful. So try it. I'm a big believer in just saying, just try it and see whether it's you or not.
Yes.
It's try one session. What have you got to lose?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think that more matter-of-fact approach, if people can cultivate that, I think that really stands us in very good stead.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I helped a guy that was losing his sight, and he said to me after his final session, when his sight was returning, he said, "What you do is a joke, but I have no other explanation for why my eyesight is getting better."
Bit of a backhanded compliment.
No, I really liked it, actually, because I do feel that from the rational scientific world, the everyday world that so many people inhabit, what we do is a joke.
Yes.
And rather than try and come up with some complicated explanation, I think it's better to, I actually raise it before people do. You know, so, you can see the relief as they know, because it allows them then to be, this doesn't make sense.
Yes.
You know, it allows them to feel like that, but actually stay with the process.
Yes, I think as well, it's a nice acknowledgement that people are complicated. It's like people are complicated and our conditions can come from multiple sources and they don't make sense. So why should the work that we use to untangle that make any more sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So talking along those lines, I mean, I know you've been hugely successful in business, and you've done workshops and you've done talks on supporting business and getting your business to grow. And something I've been asking some of our interviewees is whether they have any hints or tips that can help somebody either who's starting out in practice to build up some momentum, or people who've been in practice for a while and maybe, you know, could just do with some advice to keep clients coming, or whatever it is that's going on for them.
Yeah, I think my biggest tip is the most successful practitioners are not necessarily the most technically competent. You know, a lot of people concentrate on technical competence, and of course you need to be technically competent without a doubt, but you need to also run it as a business. And you know, I think, and for a lot of people that's really difficult. I mean, if you say to people, why did you become a kinesiologist, or why did you become a therapist, the answer is to help people. Yeah, you know, 99% of people, that would be that. There might be some additional stuff, but that's the first answer, to help people. Why did you become a therapist? To help people. And because that's the motivating force, it's then quite difficult to add on the money bit, because if you want to help people, then surely you shouldn't be charging very much. Surely you shouldn't, maybe not charging anything at all, and so on. And I actually got a lot of flack in the early days from other kinesiologists, because I ran it as a business. And there was sort of mutterings about, oh, Jane's interested in the money, you know, that's her main interest. And it wasn't, but it went side by side with helping people get better. And one of the people who had most trouble about the fact that I ran it as a business, and I would, you know, I was charging more than almost anybody else, any other kinesiologist I knew. And she said to me about 10 years later, she said, you know, when I look back, she said, I didn't want to charge people. I just wanted to help people. And she said, you wanted to run it as a business. And in fact, when I look back at the last 10 years, you've actually helped far more people than I have by running it as a business and not just trying to help people. And, you know, I think that's true for a lot of people. And we need to run it as a business. We need to see that we deserve to be rewarded for our work. That doesn't mean you can't do sessions for free. It doesn't mean you can't do reduced fees.
Yeah.
You know, I had a client where I bartered chocolate cake for sessions. So she'd bring in these chocolate cakes for me, and, you know, somebody did some gardening for me in return for sessions and things like that. I mean, you know, you can do all of that. Doesn't stop you doing it. In fact, if you charge most people at a level, then it allows you to, it gives you more scope. Yes. To charge some people very little, or to do an exchange with them.
Yeah, and again,
you know, money in itself is not a bad thing. It's like a knife.
yes.
You know, I mean, a knife, you can use it to kill someone. You can use it to cook a beautiful meal for someone you love, to show your love and affection. You can use knives in lots of different ways. Money's the same. You can use money to benefit yourself, your family, your community, your world. And you can also, it can also turn you into a horrible, nasty person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, it's like, you know, being paid for what we do and setting a price also gives it value. You know, you're instantly saying, this is the value I place on this work that I do. This is how seriously I take it, and this is what I believe it's worth. So yeah, my daughter, she was only about 5 or 6, and I was getting ready to go to my clinic for the day, and she was asking about what I did, and she said, why do people pay you for it if you're helping them? And you know, thinking on my feet, I'd never really thought about it in those terms. And I said, well, if people didn't pay me, then I would have to go and get another job to pay the mortgage and pay for all your wants and needs. And if I had another job, then I wouldn't have time to do kinesiology. So if I wasn't doing kinesiology, I wouldn't then be helping people. So when people pay me, they're actually paying me to allow me to continue to work. So I kind of don't think they're paying for their session. They're paying for me to then be able to continue to work on the next person.
Well, that's
And she was happy with that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I think about it now.
Yeah, I think that's great. Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you. So we're talking pearls of wisdom because it's our 30th anniversary. Have you got an insight, a little pearl that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, when I was first asked this, when you asked me about this before this chat, you know, I thought, a kinesiology technique. What kinesiology technique can I share? And of course, I mean, there's all sorts of techniques that have helped me, my family, my clients, a lot. But I think the pearl I want to share is that it's not all energy. I once did a talk on it is all energy. But I think it's also, that's true, but it's also not all energy. Both of these are true. Both of these exist in the world at the same time. And I think I've been really guilty of this in the past when I was, you know, teaching and seeing loads of clients, and, you know, people were getting amazingly well, of believing that everything can be sorted by energy work. You know, if you do the right energy work, or you give them the right batch flower remedy or flower, you know, other flower remedy to take, or if you give them the right affirmation to say, or whatever it is, that these energy, all you need to do is get the energetic inputs right, and everyone will get miraculously well. And I think it's understandable we feel like that, because in so many ways kinesiology is miraculous and does do, you know, I mean, I'm sure we could spend another 10 hours talking about the miraculous results we've had with kinesiology. You know, people who've been given up on by medicine and told, you know, you're just going to be on these drugs for the rest of your life, and now they're drug free, and and people, you know, in terrible states mentally, physically, got better. But there's a bit that I think really gets missed, and that's about a healthy lifestyle. And it's easy to miss it. I think one of the problems, you know, I used to be a tea drinker. I used to drink about 15 cups of tea a day. I mean, I was just constantly drinking black tea. And I remember saying to a group of students once when I was teaching them, you know, I wouldn't tell anybody to give up black tea because, you know, I can't do it. So I wouldn't ask anybody else I wouldn't ask anybody to do it as something that I couldn't do. I said in a really holier than thou voice. And afterwards I kept on thinking about this and thinking, hang on a minute, Some of my clients need to give up black tea, but I won't tell them to because I can't do it. You know, what sort of therapist am I? You know, it really brought something home to me. So, okay, I've got to give up black tea. And it was extremely difficult. I had really bad headaches for about 5 days. I had really bad withdrawal from it, but I managed it. And then after that, it became part of my menu of things I might think about for clients, you know, that they might need to either give up black tea or reduce the amount they were doing. And I think things like exercise and eating a healthy diet sort of fall into this category as well. They're a bit like, you know, if I'm not taking regular exercise, how can I expect? Yeah. You know, how can I say to people, I think you should be taking it regular exercise? You know, if I'm not doing it myself, if I'm eating loads of sticky buns, you know, it's quite difficult for me to say to somebody, you need to reduce your sugar intake, you know, or your white flour intake or whatever. So I guess it's partly a call to other people to, you know, you need to look at these things. I've got some really interesting stats, which I just want to share with you. I'm going to have to read them because I can't remember these, but it's estimated that 4 in 10 cancers can be prevented by lifestyle changes. You know, that's changes to stopping smoking, health, plant-based diet, exercise, and so on. On the NHS website, it gives these stats, and I've just picked a few of them. If you take regular exercise, you have up to a 35% lower risk of coronary heart disease and stroke, a 50% lower risk of type 2 diabetes, a 30% lower risk of depression, a 30% lower risk of dementia. That's just, I mean, there's more. So, you know, we get people come to us as kinesiologists, maybe who are suffering from depression. Do we consider that actually exercise may be alongside the flower remedies, alongside the energy work? You know, I think we need to educate our clients about blue zones. Blue zones are communities in the world where people routinely live to be 90 or 100. There's lots of information on the internet about blue zones, and there's books being written about blue zones, and they live to be 90 to 100, but then not only did they live to that age, they are also healthy to that age. That's the difference, isn't it? And that's the difference. There's a most dreadful statistic that in Europe, on average, somebody who lives to 80 will spend the last 20 years of their life in unhealthy. Wow. I mean, that's just appalling, isn't it? They'll have 60, the average is you'll have 60 years, you know, feeling healthy, and then you'll have 20 years feeling unhealthy. I don't believe that kinesiology can solve that. You know, if everybody had kinesiology every week or every month, I think we'd still have a problem. Because, you know, unless people took the exercise, unless people ate the food and so on. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess which makes it sound like I'm downgrading kinesiology, and I'm absolutely not at all. Because I think, again, it's like you do need those things, but sometimes, and I guess where the kinesiology can come in is not only is it helping people identify where they need to make those changes, but it can also help with the mindset, like with what you've just been saying about 60 to 80 and a decline in health. Well, how much of that is attitude? How much of that is assumption that, well, I've reached this age, so now it's clearly a downhill slope, you know? So I think it's why it's complementary, isn't it? It's that beautiful way of bringing everything together in order to make things work better. And, you know, I often say to my clients that, you know, we think about energy and we think about thoughts, but we forget our physical body, and our physical body is still an integral part of that whole system. You know, we do sometimes overlook it, and it's, you know, this is kind of what it's all about. This is a vehicle that makes everything else, it brings everything else together. So, I mean, you're clearly still hugely enthusiastic about all of these things, which is why I guess, you know, you're on your new venture, which is this Upliness. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Does that relate in with what you've been saying? Yeah, it does very much, actually. over the last year or so, I've been thinking about role models and thinking that we really need more role models of older people who are doing aging well in all sorts of different ways. And, you know, if I look at, you know, what's out there, it's either these impossibly glamorous models who have the body of a, I don't know, 45-year-old but are actually 75 or something, completely unrelatable for most of us, and make us actually feel worse about ourselves. Or they're sort of decrepit old people sitting in a chair with a blanket over their knees, watching the telly, complaining about their ailments, that sort of thing. And so I've decided to launch Upliness. So it's upliness.net. Upliness is actually a made-up word, but I rather like it because I think it's sort of gives a sense of
buoyant. Yeah.
Buoyant, yes, yes. One of my aims is to get it accepted as an Oxford Dictionary word. It will be word of the year. You know, because everybody will be talking about Upliness. I'm feeling quite upply today, sort of thing. And so the aim of it is it's going to be a membership site, so people will pay £9 a month or less if they pay annually to access it. And in the site we've got interviews with experts, both complementary therapy people and also mainstream doctors, a pharmacist, a clinical psychologist, a psychiatrist, talking about healthy aging, giving information about healthy aging and how you can do a healthy aging. And then also I'm doing interviews with ordinary people, and this is where the role model bit comes in, so I'm talking to people about, you know, their experience of getting older and how they've managed it. So for example, I mean, at one extreme, I've got a man who was married for 42 years and then his wife committed suicide. And we're talking about how he dealt with that. You know, I mean, it's a sort of really extreme example. I've got people who've retired and, you know, who taught themselves new skills. A lady of 67 who's setting up a new business. You know, a woman whose husband has MS and she's his main carer. And she was getting very depressed and down. So she went to the gym and now she's started walking and she's taking on all these different walking challenges, and how that's, you know, benefited her life and benefited her ability to help her husband with multiple sclerosis. So lots and lots of different examples in it. There will be a community group in it as well, a bit like a Facebook page, but without having to join Facebook. And lots of other sort of information and stuff. So I'm incredibly excited about it.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Yeah, a lot of work as well, but good stuff. Because I think the one thing most of us are guaranteed is that we're going to get older. Yes,
we are. And what I want is people to not see it as all downhill. You know, I mean, I did a post on my Instagram recently saying one of the best kept secrets of aging, or the best kept secret of aging, is that you can get happier, healthier, fitter, stronger. You know, but that's not what's portrayed out there. Is that it's downhill.
Yes.
So yeah.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you very much, and thank you for giving us your time today, Jane. It's been a real privilege speaking to you.
I've enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.